Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition is Operation Secret Storm, brought to us by Color Dreams. Secret Storm is another one of those unlicensed masterpieces that only Color Dreams was able to do on the NES. The game features very similar gameplay to a lot of the other unlicensed games from Color Dreams or Wisdom Tree, depending upon whatever they were calling themselves at that moment, including games like Secret Scout, or Bible Adventures, or Menace Beach. Secret Storm does have the distinction, though, of being based on an actual event, the first Iraq conflict of the early 1990s. In the game, we're playing as a generic soldier who is trying to, I guess, stop Saddam. And he does so by traveling throughout Iraq, going to various different areas of Iraq, and taking out various bases and other things. The game is filled with nonsensical enemies. Things that just make absolutely no sense, but then again, the masters of Color Dreams, I'm sure, knew what they were doing. If you're familiar with any of the combat from some of the previous games like this, it's extremely stiff and very delayed when it comes to your jumping, as well as your attacking. You have a couple of different attacks though with your main character, including being able to hold the up button and be able to actually lob grenades by pressing the select button. Holding directions like up or down will do different moves, and you can actually jump in the air for a jump kick, which is actually one of the most efficient maneuvers in order to damage enemies, especially enemies in groups, as you can sometimes hit multiple enemies with a flying jump kick. The gameplay consists of screen after screen of taking on whatever enemies may be present in a particular level, with each level having different varieties of enemies. Here we arrive at actually the first level boss, a giant eagle. I don't know why we're fighting an eagle when we're supposed to be representing America, but either way, it is a giant eagle. You have to wait for him to kind of come down or go after him, and do a jump kick is probably the best strategy in order to deliver a hit to the bird without taking damage yourself. You'll notice in the upper left corner your health, which of course can actually fill up past the 5 hearts currently on screen. You don't know exactly how much health you have at a given time, but of course, once a heart disappears, then you know you're getting relatively low on health. In the upper right corner, you have your life count, and that's pretty much it. After completing a stage, you move on directly to the next level, where you continue the process of beating up the enemies. Now, there are a few different enemy types and different styles of attacks. Basically, you'll have normal enemies that just kind of run up to you and try to attack you, and then you have other ones that do have projectiles, like these guys in the red turbans. Try to get close to them immediately once they appear on screen so you can keep hitting them in order to kind of get them in a loop where you'll be able to do damage to them, but they won't be able to fire off the projectiles, which become relatively difficult to actually dodge. The other main enemy in this particular level, the guy with no shirt and the white pants, is really no threat, as you'll be able to easily hit him multiple times like we were able to do so with the enemies in that first stage. There isn't really a huge amount of strategy. It's a lot of luck when it comes to actually landing your blows, but like I said, doing the jump attacks is probably going to be your best bet. Also of note, level 2 is actually the hardest stage in the game, and not because of the enemies, but actually the boss. All other enemies and all other bosses in the game are relatively easy to deal with, especially like with this. Even though I'm fighting 3 enemies at once, doing the jump kicks up into the air, I'm able to knock them back and keep doing damage to them. After 4 or 5 hits, depending upon the enemy, they'll fall off screen. Sometimes you can actually get just one enemy to spawn. If you don't walk all the way over to the right to get them all to spawn, you can kind of get one to appear, take him out, and then focus on the others, but it all depends on how you really want to handle the situations. Besides the grenades that you can pick up and use using the select button, you can also pick up guns, and actually, you're at a disadvantage with the gun. It seems to do less damage than just doing the jump kick to enemies, as well as it ends up, well, being able to be your only attack. You can't really use the jump kick when you have the gun, and since the jump kick is actually better than the gun most of the time, it's best if you accidentally pick up bullets just to fire them as quickly as you can. Now, you can keep an enemy at bay using the gun, like this, where you're able to keep him on the far right side, but as I'm able to do so, he'll still be able to fire his projectiles at me, so I'm still kind of at a disadvantage. The first couple of levels are basically flat, but they do get different terrain the farther we go in. Now, when it comes to the actual boss of this stage, this is a nightmare. He jumps and fires constantly. The best strategy is to kind of get him in a loop using the gun, hitting him multiple times, because every time you land a hit, he'll jump up into the air again. You can time it correctly, you'll be able to hit him, jump over the projectile he fires out, then land, fire again, and get him in a nice loop until you're out of bullets. Once you're out of bullets, you're then going to have to do jump kicks flying towards him in order to try to hit him. Like I said, every time you hit him, he will bounce away, but this gives him an opportunity to get out more projectiles. It's a crapshoot. Honestly, if you're able to get past this level, you should be able to complete the rest of the game in relatively no trouble, other than maybe falling asleep from boredom. This is the hardest boss. I can't underestimate just how hard that boss actually is, and how a lot of times it's just dumb luck if you're actually able to beat them. We move on to the next level, which is an Arabian Town, which has these pretty much make-it executioner guys. I mean, these guys are just weird. It makes no sense why they're even in a level like this. Be very careful, though, there are spike pits, and you don't really hit the spikes, you usually just end up falling to your death. So just avoid them at all costs. At any point you do run out of health, you will pick up exactly where you left off. You don't have to go back to like the beginning of the level or anything like that, so you don't have to worry about checkpoints or the like. Of course, unfortunately, once you run out of lives, though, it is game over. I don't think you actually can continue in the game either, which is kind of annoying. Now time for the next boss. We pick up our first grenade up here in the upper right, but I'm not going to use it here. In fact, I'll save it till the end of the game. For this Flying Carpet Arabian guys, I clearly don't think Operation Secret Storm's developers had any clue what they should have actually put in a game like this. He'll fly around on his magic carpet, eventually landing. When he does land, this is your opportunity to hit him. Now, you can chase him around and try to kick him and stuff, but you won't be able to do damage until he actually lands and goes into a different sprite form, which I guess is him standing on his legs again, but it's just really weird, the transition between the floating version of him and the actual, like, normal standing version. I think sometimes when you hit him in the air, you'll knock him instantly down to the ground, though sometimes I'll hit him and he doesn't come down to the ground either. It's just kind of waiting for him to finally land so I can actually hit him. In the next level, you'll have these guys in these white tracked suits, and they have like long black hair. They're pretty much standard fare for the other normal enemies that we've been dealing with. So I'm just going to be mostly using the jump flying kick in order to do damage. The big enemy, though, for this level is these giant red demons. Now, they do a lot of damage. But if you're able to time your jumps correctly, you can keep doing damage to them and they won't be able to hit you. You have to do some pretty precise timing in order to do so, but once you get that timing down, these giant monsters, which would be a pretty big threat to you, go down pretty easy. Now, the game does not provide a lot of health whatsoever. Basically, at a few hard moments, usually either after a tough boss or before you go to a tough area, it'll just bombard you with health. So you'll be able to pick up all the health during this particular segment, like right here, where we had 3 hearts. We don't see health scattered throughout the levels for most of the time, but this part gives us multiple hearts for us to pick up. Just be careful not to accidentally scroll the screen too far so that you end up missing one of the health items. There's also grenades spread apart, so you can get those as well. The grenades, just like everything else, you can actually hold more than what shows at the top of the screen, but eventually you'll start to see that dwindle, and that's how you know you're actually getting low. Next up, we fight a green version of the same demon we fought earlier, and this is actually the boss here, but we can time our jumps just like we did before, and you basically just want to avoid that giant claw. That claw will do a lot of damage, so we're just going to try to avoid it. But right after, we get more health. In fact, 3 more hearts are located here, and that's actually the end of the level, so don't go too far right so that you end up hitting the side of the screen and move on to that next level before you're able to grab your health. Now, next up is a level which I guess these guys are trying to wear some kind of radioactive suit, as if they were working on nuclear weapons of some kind. I'm just trying to give some justification for the existence of these guys. You also have to deal with these soldiers who are very, very athletic. They can do these cartwheel type flips and just bounce all over the place, and they get quite annoying because when they bounce away from you, they're going to fire out their projectile, and when you get multiple of these guys on screen at once, it can be quite a chore to chase them all down while also trying to avoid damage. I recommend if you get a screen like this where you have one of those guys and one of the other type, try to take down the cartwheeling guy first, because he's more of a threat because he has a longer range weapon. Thankfully, right here, they give you a little bit of health in case you're hurting still from some of the previous levels, but more health is always a good thing when it comes to this game, because some of the enemies can drain it pretty quickly, and you won't even know what they're doing to you damage-wise because you can't tell what they're doing to you damage-wise. Just like some of the earlier levels, there really isn't too much to this stage. It's kind of another flat walkway, and a lot of it we're going to be spending chasing these guys down. Now, you can jump to those platforms above. A lot of times the enemies themselves love to jump up there, so you may want to chase them a little bit. But overall, it's really not that difficult of a stage. If you can get one enemy by itself, like I was able to here with this guy, I can hit him a few times before going too far to the right. Now this part gets a little bit trickier. With 4 enemies on screen, the game starts to slow down, just like most NES games do when they get too many enemies or other things going on. So it can hinder your performance because your jump is already so slow and so delayed, it can be a little bit harder to hit enemies when the game does slow down a little bit. Now you would think with all 4 of those guys on screen at once that would be the end of the stage, because I mean, honestly, we've proven ourselves that we can handle all those guys, but right afterwards we get more of the flipping guys, and it's just as fun as it's been throughout the entire stage, trying to watch out for their rotating flips as they're trying to run away from us. The length of the levels, as well as the amount of enemies per level, is completely all over the place in the game. As you've seen, a few levels already were relatively short, but then you have a level like this, where it's a lot of enemies and a much longer playing field. So I thought when I got to here the first time that, oh, I guess all the levels are going to get longer from here on out, but that isn't true. Here I'm able to kind of get one of the enemies by himself a little bit over to the left and beat him up, before going too far right so that I end up spawning the rest of the guys who I would normally have to fight along with him. One thing I do have to give credit to Operation Secret Storm is, overall, it actually doesn't play nearly as bad as a lot of the other games by Color Dreams. I mean, the controls are nowhere near good, or neither is the game, but the hit detection on the enemies and the smoothness of the combat is a lot better in this particular game over, like, all the other ones. I really do wish, though, they had made this level in particular a little bit shorter. Just a few less sets of enemies would have really helped out, because this level just goes on forever and ever, it feels like. Sometimes if you're able to scroll the screen just right or get a little bit lucky, you can actually cause some of the enemies to go off screen so you don't have to actually fight them at all, like I was able to do with that one guy who kind of like cartwheeled his way off the screen just enough so that I didn't have to deal with them. With this level being as long as it is, you think it would end with some kind of like really awesome boss fight considering how many enemies that we've been battling throughout it, but it actually just ends with the normal enemies. Here we have another set of the 4 cartwheeling guys, and This is difficult because it's going to slow down, you're going to have enemies firing at you from whatever side you're not currently on, so you got to watch out for a lot of those projectiles. The good thing is, once they're all finally taken out here, this is actually the end of this stage, and we can move on to that next level finally. Now next up is another one of the Arabian Village style levels, and it starts off with the boss that we fought earlier on in the game. This magic genie guy flies around, I guess on a magic carpet or just floats around in general. You can attack him to kind of knock him out of the air, and then you'll have to attack him on the ground to actually do damage. It's really kind of just luck as you're just waiting for him to finally land so you can actually get in that hit. But now this guy has become basically a normal enemy that we're going to have to battle multiple times throughout this stage. I will admit though, he has a relatively cool death animation, at least as far as this game's concerned. Most of the enemies just end up falling off the screen altogether, but for these guys they end up kind of dissipating with the magic, slowly breaking them apart. There isn't a whole lot of strategy other than trying to predict where you think they may get ready to land so that you can try to get in and nail that hit as soon as they end up going back to their kind of standing animation. When you're facing off with these guys, if one ends up going back to his kind of standing form, you have to go over and attack him or else he's going to just keep firing projectiles at you. And the problem with their projectiles is they're actually homing, so they will try to chase you down. When you're dealing with two or more of these guys on screen at once, it does get a little bit more difficult. Two, easily manageable, but when you get to three on screen at once, which is what we're going to be facing after this, it definitely gets a lot tougher, because one can end up going to that form on the far side of the screen while you're dealing with the other two, and a projectile ends up coming your way. Once you make it to fighting all three of them at once, it's a pretty easy battlefield to battle with them, as long as you don't go too far to the left so you end up falling into that spike pit. Most of the screen is pretty easy to maneuver around, be able to get up the platforms to the roof, and be able to keep attacking these guys. As soon as one lands, I'm able to immediately deliver an attack. Now you always have your grenades on you, so you can always use them to help you take out multiple targets at once. But like I said, I usually like to wait until later on in the game to use them. But that is the end of that level, and we move on to the next stage when it introduces another new style of enemy. These guys are kind of weird in their overall animation, but they're a really, really simple enemy to deal with. The harder enemy during these stages is these kind of mummy skeleton ninja guys. They're a little bit quicker, a little bit more powerful, but they still are pretty easy in order to get close to, deliver a hit or two, and just keep pounding on them until they're able to get knocked off of the screen. Be sure to climb up here though from that left side so that you can grab the extra bit of health that's located, because it's been a little bit since we were able to get some extra health. Then you can drop down and take the guy down out below. This is an overall pretty simple level. It gets a little challenging when you get to this spot because there are three of the enemies, but if you just do the jump kick strategy that we've been doing throughout the entire game, it's really no problem to take them all out. One thing weird that will happen sometimes is an enemy will just jump off the screen. It only happens, I think, with this type of enemy, and it happens usually once per playthrough, it seems to, for me. Or at least maybe that's just my luck. So there's just one less guy that you're going to have to deal with. Over here, you're going to have to battle 4 enemies at once. 2 of the orange tracksuit type guys, or pajama wearing guys. I don't even know what they're supposed to have on. And then you also have 2 of like the weird ninja mummy guys. There's enough space where you can actually space each of the enemies out, or if you want to try to get them all clustered together. Either way, jump strategy, should be no issue getting rid of them. Move over just a little bit farther, and that's actually the end of the stage. It should just probably end right after those 4 guys, but for some reason you have to walk just a little bit over to the right. In the next level, our wonderful friends, the Cartwheeling guys, are back. The only thing is, they actually have a new move now. They actually throw grenades, which you think would be more deadly, but it's actually not, because mostly the grenades will just go right past you. Or maybe they're just small bombs. Either way, they'll usually just go completely over you or away from you and explode, so you'll see the flash. But as long as your character doesn't end up getting knocked back once the screen flashes, you know you're not taking any damage. The strategy, though, for the guys is the same, as you'll have to watch out for the grenades, as well as their normal straight-up attack that they've been doing before, where they'll fire that projectile straight at you. The only thing good, though, is this level is actually relatively short in comparison to the first level that we ended up battling these guys. And since there are a couple of different levels of platforms, you'll have really no problem being able to dodge the attacks of these guys. After battling the 2 of them together, then you move on, you're fighting, well, 3 of them together. I know, kind of shocking, right? Unfortunately, by this point in the game, though, it does start to get monotonous of you just battling these guys. You've been using the jump kick so many times, and the enemies, yeah, they do change up, thankfully. Thankfully, it's not the same exact enemy every single level, but it's still basically the same ordeal each and every level. The good thing is, though, that's the end of the stage once you defeat all 3 of those guys, and we move on to the next level. Now, the next stage is another one of the Arabian City style levels. You kind of see the giant Hershey Kisses, basically, in the background on tops of the buildings. It's really kind of no way to tell exactly what this is supposed to represent. It's kind of just like a mishmash of potential Arabian-style buildings, but it still makes no sense. Now, for this level, you'll have to fight a blue version of those mummy-style guys that we've been battling throughout the game. They are pretty quick when you're battling them here. It's a pretty flat level, though, while you're traveling through, so it's very easy to gather them up into the corner, or at least bunch them up together, so that one kick can end up hitting multiple of them. They do have, like, swords they end up kind of using, and you'll have to deal with that, but it's a pretty simple fight. Considering we've been doing this the whole game so far, you should have no problem dealing with these guys. This level is also another relatively quick one, as we're already at the end after battling that last set of 3, and then we move on to the next stage, which happens to be the final level of the game. Now, when you start off in this level, just run to the right. Don't hold back, don't try to dodge the bombs, just run to the right, every so often, doing a little jump over these weird flying bug creatures that appear for some reason. After a little while, you're going to run into what I assume is Saddam himself. Do a jump kick to Saddam, and then he'll fly into the air and turn into a helicopter. I can't even make this up if I tried. When he's in helicopter mode, he will fly around, eventually landing, and when he does land, you'll be able to hit him and knock him back into the air. Now, when he's in helicopter form, you cannot hurt him whatsoever, so don't waste your grenades or try to jump up and attack him. Just stay away from him, watching out for the dynamite or bombs that he ends up throwing out. It's a very, very long battle that you'll have to deal with. And unfortunately, you don't do this battle once, not twice, but actually 3 times you're going to have to do this fight before we're actually able to complete the game. In fact, the first time I did it, I beat him twice, and I thought the game was broken. It was just going in an infinite loop, but after that third battle, I was able to actually complete the game. A little while into the fight, he will eventually change colors, and when he does change colors, your character also changes colors. Unfortunately, limitations, I guess, of the NES color palette that Color Dreams wasn't really able to work around. Now, during this entire fight, you can accidentally run to the left side. You don't want to, though, because the screen will scroll, and if you scroll it too far, you're going to end up having those bombs flying overhead that we had to deal with when we were running to this point, as well as the bugs. The only thing good is grenades still spawn on the ground, so you can pick up more grenades if you wanted to use them. Another thing you've probably noticed maybe throughout the game, but especially here, is projectiles will go off of one side of the screen and come back the other way. Once you change back into normal color scheme, he'll explode and die. That's the way you know that you've done the last bit of damage. But then after walking just a few steps to the right, another one of the Saddams appears, so do an attack and he'll fly back into the air. This is usually why I end up saving my grenades, because they do about as much damage as one of the jump kicks. But if Saddam ends up on that far left side of the screen, it's a good way to use the grenades instead of actually forcing my character to walk over there. The grenade doesn't need to be anywhere near him in order to actually do damage to him. The good thing, though, is this is the end of the game. It may be a pretty long, drawn-out fight, but as long as you actually have, like, a life left, or at least a little bit of health, you should be able to manage your way through. The bombs can do a decent amount of damage, as well as he does have a standing attack of his own, as you saw he was able to get out. And as long as you don't go too far to the left, which thankfully, if you do go to the left, you can come back to the right. You're not stuck on that left side. So just keep waiting for those opportunities, and eventually he'll land so that you're able to get in that hit. Usually you can tell when he's about to land as he'll drop straight down like a rock if he's in the air whatsoever, so you'll be able to see that running close and deliver that hit. The hard part is being able to get a hit in on him when he's really close to the ground already and then decides to land. This is usually when he ends up getting off one of his projectiles against me. Down goes the second one of these bosses, and we're just going to walk over to the right a little bit more and battle Saddam number 3. Nothing changes up whatsoever when it comes to this battle, so you've already done it twice. You should probably be a pretty good expert by the time you get to this third and final one. Just like always, he'll change color when you know you're about halfway done with dealing with him. If you have any grenades left at this point, you might as well go ahead and use them in order to help you try to finish him off a little bit quicker. Once you deliver the final hit, though, be prepared, because the ending for Operation Secret Storm is simply too good to be true. And there it was. Simply amazing. A masterpiece. A true masterpiece of game endings. You can barely read the game over as it's flashing up on the map screen, and then the game goes back to the title screen, and you can start it all over again. That's it. You don't even get a congratulations or something. So I have to say, while this game plays better than a lot of other Color Dreams games, Secret Scout still has the best ending. But with that, that's going to wrap up this edition of Play It Through. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving a thumbs up or commenting down below. Those things actually do help the video. Now if you enjoyed this Play It Through, be sure to check out my Play It Through I did a long time ago of the Color Dreams classic Secret Scout. If for nothing else, the ending alone is worth seeing. Now I also need to thank all the members of my Patreon. Your continued support is allowing me to continue doing what I'm doing. Keeping the reviews coming, the Play It Throughs, the Snack Shacks, Bar Geeks, live streams, everything involving myself, the Cornshaq channels. And just as little as $1 a month. You can check out more information about Patreon by clicking the Patreon button down below. But guys, thank you so much for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.